The Cavaliers suddenly can't find their shooting stroke. LeBron James finds his way back to LA's lineup, but the Lakers get crushed by a near quadruple double. Plus, the NBA tried to stop tanking, but teams, like life, find a way. That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories every day with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. He's the man of 1,000 podcasts. It's Matt Moore.
I fed a giraffe this weekend.
First clouds, now giraffe. Go on. What did you? I mean, they seem like that would be easy to find.
It's a pretty self-evident statement, Doug. There's not like a lot of like follow-up to it. I fed a giraffe this weekend. Like, there's not like, it's not code. I'm not speaking to you as like from some sort of like CIA directive. There's a zoo in Colorado Springs. Took the daughter down there and the family and got to feed the giraffes. It was amazing.
I got it. You fed a giraffe. Although you said you found a giraffe, which confused me a little bit.
I found one and then I fed one.
Got it. From the Locked On Bulls podcast, he's our Prince of Petty. It's Haize. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. I didn't get to feed any animals, but I did see a goat get cooked when the Bulls beat the Lakers. So there you go.
All right. That's a tease ahead. We're going to talk about this game between the Bulls and the Lakers. LeBron James returning to the lineup. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. They avoided a fifth straight loss with a win over the Utah Jazz on Sunday. But all does not appear well in Cleveland. Is it time to panic over the darlings of the Eastern Conference? Here's Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs with his take.
Last 5 games, which is the 4 losses plus the game they won on Sunday against Utah. The Cavs are shooting 31.3% from beyond the arc. They're still number 1 in the league at 38% from deep. But over the last 5 games, they've been the worst 3-point shooting team in basketball. Does that explain everything? Of course not. They didn't go on that 4-game losing streak solely because they couldn't make shots. Was that a big part of it? Yes, absolutely. I do think that is the surest sign that this is a team that is exhausted. I think both physically and mentally. Losing a four games in a row is out of the ordinary for them. It doesn't mean it was ever time to press the panic button, as I told you on this show. Doesn't mean that, their goals ever changed or that our opinion of them as a team should have ever changed. And it didn't for me. And I don't think that it should have for you either.
Now let's find out what Matt and Haize think. Matt, are you worried about the shooting numbers that Danny just laid out there, particularly with Donovan Mitchell, who statistically is one of the coldest players in the entire league over the past 2 weeks plus?
I get it, because part of our job as Locked On host is really to kind of like keep the the barbarians at the gate and like calm everybody down and be a reassuring voice. But just once for one of these elite teams when they go through a bad stretch, I would like it to be like, no, I'm panicking. No, the whole season might be done. Everything instead, it's always the opposite. It's like, no, I'm not panicking. That's ridiculous. It's gonna be fine. It is gonna be fine. Like, look, the Cavaliers, you can't go this entire season and then just turn into a 31% 3-point shooting team. Nobody in the league is that. So this is an outlier kind of performance. I did check on this, which is how many teams have had a 4-game losing streak and won the title, because historically, great teams win the title. 2023 Nuggets, 2022 Warriors both did it. 2024 Celtics did not. But I think that's kind of like a good indication, and on down the line. Like, there's throughout the last 20 years of history, lots of teams that won the title have had a 4-game losing streak. So this isn't some sort of like real disaster situation. I think it's an outlier situation with them on a West Coast road trip. I think it's a performance well outside the bounds. They also stabilize things with a win over the Jazz. I'm not too worried about it, but it shows that you're always having to kind of be on the guard for when things are going to turn on you after you've played so well for 5 whole months, Haize.
Yeah, 5 months is a long time to do something, right? So like the Cavs are going to be fine. I get the initial panic of looking at it, especially after 4-game losing streak. I understand all of that. But it's March, and I don't want to blame everything on that, but like this is a team that's played so good against so many good. It'd be different if they were a team that, didn't have the best record over teams above 500. Maybe they were just beating the bottom feeders or something like that. Like this is a team that's been dominant against the Western Conference, especially almost the whole entire year. Every team goes through a little bit of a decline there first. I wouldn't call it a decline, but like a bad stretch there. And that's what the Cavs are going through. But I would be willing to bet that by the end of April, the middle of April, they'll be perfectly fine. If it even lasts that long, there's no need to panic.
I do want to apologize because I said that nobody in the league shoots 31% because that seems like the Magic shoot 31% on the season from 3-point range. My apologies to the Magic.
All right, it's Monday, always a good day to level set. I'd like to know where your contender line is right now. Who's comfortably inside your contender line, who's straddling the contender line, and who's just on the outside looking in. Haize, where do you have things right now as we sit just a couple of weeks away from playoff time?
Firmly in the contender line would be the Cavs, Celtics, Thunder, and Nuggets. I still have those guys. I know that they're technically the 3rd seed now in the Western Conference, but I still have the Nuggets up there. Straddling that line are the Lakers, and still, I know I'm probably out on an island by myself here, but I still don't count out the Minnesota Timberwolves. Wow. So those are teams that are straddling that line for me.
What about the Timberwolves keeps them on the line?
That they still have been so good both offensively and defensively. They have Anthony Edwards, who I feel like has the chance to be the best player in the series in just about every series, except unless he plays against Jokic and the Thunder. But I think he has a chance to be the best player on the court in a lot of those series. And I think that they played really good at a really good time, and I think they have the chance to catch fire here at the end of the season going into the playoffs.
Wolves, yes. Warriors, no for you?
Warriors are still there. I still have the Warriors. The thing I just look at with the Warriors is just it still matters so much to them about who that first round series is, but I think they'll be fine overall.
You got a lot of teams in there. It's 3.
It's the line. That's straight on the line.
Yeah, I get you. There's only 3 teams that can win. There's only 3 teams. It's Thunder, Cavs, Celtics. That's it. That's not just based off of like perception of how good these teams are. There's 2 categories that I care about, which is the 40-20 rule, 40 wins before 20 losses. Those are the only 3 teams that accomplished it. You also have to be a top 3 seed. So anybody that again, there are only 2 teams in NBA history that outside of a top 3 seed have won the NBA title. That's it. That's 69 Celtics, 95 Rockets. That's it. So a lot of teams can make the finals, but they can't win it. Are those contenders? Because I would go with Haize there on most of those teams. Like, I think the Wolves can make the finals. I think the Nuggets can make the finals. I think the Warriors can make the finals. I'm kind of curious about some of the other teams in the West, about somebody being better than we think they are. Like, I'm always looking for who are we out on right now that could surprise us, because the playoffs don't start for another month. Right? Like, think about how differently things looked a month ago and then how they look now. So I'm always trying to look at that from that perspective. But as far as who's going to win the title, it's going to be one of Thunder, Celtics, Cavs. That's it.
All right, let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Is Matt Moore counting out your favorite team? Let him know. Is Haize including too many teams straddling his line? Is the line too full for Haize? Let us know. All right, coming up on Locked On NBA, we're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors, who hope to get Steph Curry back on their road trip. The Lakers got LeBron James back, but they also got smacked by the Chicago Bulls in a near quadruple double. We'll tell you more about that coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder to yourself, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center with all of your accounts, your investments, your spending in one place. You can go beyond just managing money, and you can actually start building wealth. You might be surprised at how much you're spending on things like food delivery or streaming subscriptions. I know that's a big one for me. With Monarch, you'll see exactly where your money is going so you can budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, Monarch makes it easy to check your finances, track spending, and even plan for long-term goals all in one place. And if you're managing money with a partner, it's never been smoother. You can track shared and your personal accounts, set goals together, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe, stay up to date with local expert analysis. All right, LeBron James returned from a groin injury on Saturday night, scoring 17 points in the Lakers' 146-115 loss to the Chicago Bulls. Despite getting LeBron back, the Lakers defense that we've been talking a lot about, playing much better, it faltered, allowing the Bulls to dominate with standout performances from Kobe White and Josh Giddey. And we're going to get to Josh Giddey's performance in just a moment. But first, let's go to Locked On Lakers, who discussed how James looked in his first game back.
Played particularly well certainly by his standards, but he came through it fine. And so,
that was one of the things that I talked about in that show is I thought LeBron got better as the game went along, but certainly the first half, he looked completely out of rhythm. Frankly, just like the rest of the team that was completely disjointed. But I thought he got better as the game went along. But the most important thing to me was he looked healthy, he looked lively, he looked active. He did not look like he was holding anything back physically. He may not have played like LeBron or what you expect from LeBron, but he looked like LeBron. And to me, that was much more important because
I agree 100%.
I am not worried at all about LeBron not getting his timing back.
I agree.
All right, so the Lakers finally healthy again. They not only get LeBron back, they also get Rui Hachimura back. They didn't look like the team that was getting so many flowers about their defense. J.J. Redick underplayed the loss a little bit, saying that his team needed to reconnect. What do you think, Matt? Is it important for the Lakers to close the season with some kind of rhythm because of all of these late injuries that they've had?
Probably a little bit. I think you always want to get reps in just so you understand the dynamics of things. On the other hand to this, though, I will say this. I think it's funny because we talk about you want to be in a good rhythm. When all that ends, the minute that you run into a playoff opponent, you have to change all of your rhythms because you have to cater to exactly the actions that they're running, and you have to change everything on the fly. That's the great thing about the playoffs is basically everything resets at zero. It's why so often we see guys that we didn't really think were going to be huge playoff contributors. All of a sudden, who's really good in that series? Or, man, that guy killed us. It's that kind of dynamic. So I guess no, I'm going to kind of betray myself here and say no. I don't think they need to get a rhythm because the entire thing for the Lakers is they threw this thing together because of the Luka trade. It's been working, and all they got to do is figure it out once they get to the postseason. They got to figure out the problems in front of them, and that's how they're going to make a run on top of Luka Doncic being Luka Doncic.
The Lakers are such an interesting team because they look so good at times. I don't think that you need to panic, especially not after a win against the Bulls. But I do think this is a team that they still are finding their overall rhythm to get together because they made such a large trade that changed the way that they play. So I understand what JJ means here. I think overall the story that's going to be told in the playoffs is going to be the story that's told in the playoffs. JJ Redick is the first-time head coach. They made a big move at the deadline that completely changed the trajectory of their team. So overall, I think the Lakers are going to be fine here. LeBron's missed some time. He'll be fine in the playoffs, and they're going to have a lot of data to look forward to on what they need to do next year. I still don't have them winning a title this year, and that's perfectly fine, but they're going to be very dangerous next season.
No, the opposite could be. The opposite could be true here too. This run of them being this elite defense could have been smoke and mirrors, and in which case, they're screwed. Like, I'll just be very transparent. The offense has not been great. It hasn't been. The offense has not. You traded for Luka Doncic, and that's the headline is like Luka Doncic, and it's like it hasn't been him, guys. Like, he's done his thing, but the offense has kind of sucked. It's the defense. If their defense isn't elite, they're going home early.
And what would be the signal for you that that defense was smoke and mirrors? I mean, obviously, bad defensive performances all around, but what are the kind of the things when you drill down that you go, okay, maybe some of that early stuff was not what I thought it was?
So I think a lot of it is Kobe White was able to really kind of attack their weaknesses in a way that other teams were not. It didn't seem like a lot of teams were paying attention to kind of the personnel on the floor. Like, I look at the fact, I'm just like, you have Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves in a switching scheme. Put them in pick and roll. Like, just do nothing but put those guys in pick and roll constantly and make those two guys have to defend. And Reeves puts in a pretty good effort at times. And so does Luka on ball. But like, those are the kind of things to me where I'm like, if you can't, the whole thing about switching is you shouldn't have to help. If those things start to break down because their personnel isn't good enough and teams are attacking it, what does that look like? Because they're not built to not switch right now. And that to me is a very interesting question is if switching fails, what happens then? Because they don't have a lot of counter options with where the roster's at.
And what the Bulls did in that game, especially on those switches, they attacked Luka. Luka got so frustrated by the end of that game is that between Giddey and Kobe, whoever Luka got switched on, they just went attack to get to the paint. The free throw, then they got to the free throw line a lot as well. So those are things just a team that is scheming for you specifically in the playoffs are definitely going to try to attack that. So to Matt's point, like unless I think the defense is going to be exposed either way in the playoffs, I think is where I'm coming to.
And I think the big question is, and I feel like we kind of know the answer to this, and maybe even Lakers fans know the answer to this, and they're avoiding it a little bit, is like when those adjustments do happen in the playoffs, do you have something on your roster that you could then match and adjust to that adjustment? And I'm just not sure they have it. Had they not rescinded that trade for Mark Williams, maybe.
Good point. Because like their counter is to go small with Jared Vanderbilt, and how can I put this? That's been a dumpster fire rolling downhill into a hazmat zone when they've gone to it. So they're going to need to figure some stuff out. But hey, they also may not play a team that can adequately attack those switches. If you play the Clippers, that's a problem. If you play Memphis, maybe not. So it all depends on what the matchups are going to look like.
And we'll talk about this grouping here, the Grizzlies, Warriors, Timberwolves, Clippers, super tight right now, and the Lakers too, super tight right now, 4 through 8 in the Western Conference. But I want to go back to the Bulls. Josh Giddey got as close to a quadruple-double as anyone since Tim Duncan nearly did it in the 2003 finals. Giddey was just 2 steals away from an honor that only 4 NBA players have. The Bulls are playing like a team that would like the honor of a 7-game series. They've won 7 out of their last 10 games. Let's check in with Haize's co-host on Locked On Bulls, Pat the Designer, on how real he thinks this Bulls run is.
Last year's Chicago Bulls. This isn't before the All-Star break Chicago Bulls. Haize, this is a Bulls team that playoff teams don't want to see. I fully believe. Now, I think most of the teams that the Bulls will have to face if they do make the playoffs will still thrash them, right? If you go up against Boston, you know what I mean? Hey, Boston in 5. I think that the Bulls are going to be a team that first-round teams are going to look at and be like, I hope they don't make the play-in. Because if they do, I hope they don't make the playoffs, make it out of the play-in. Because if they do, we're going to have to work to beat this team. Like, it's not just a run over 8th seed anymore. Like, we're actually going to have to work hard to beat this team. They're going to want it a little bit more than what a normal 8th seed will.
Okay, so Pat, he was realistic there, saying, certain matchups probably not going to go the Bulls' way. What about you, Haize? Are you realistic about the Bulls? Are you starting to believe? Are you updating your priors a little bit on just what the Bulls are capable of or could be capable of this postseason?
The thing that over this stretch that I have changed my mind on, I was not sold on. The biggest thing is I wasn't sold on if the backcourt between Josh Giddey and Kobe White could work long term. They've really, over the last 15 games or so, found such a balance as far as how they both attack the paint. But then outside of that, Kobe, when he does play off ball, they've just found better balance. And these two guys, when you have two solid rebounding guards, one in Josh Giddey, who's an incredible playmaker. Kobe's an incredible playmaker when he is driving and actually isn't just settling for 3-point shots. It has turned around. I think overall, too, the team just fits better together. And Billy Donovan's doing some of the best coaching that he has in the last couple of years for the Chicago Bulls because he doesn't have the safety net of DeMar and Zach, and is causing to get everybody involved. So while I think they can come out the play-in, and that's initially where I was. Now, as far as in a series and making it interesting, they got the Cavs to look at if they make it out the play-in. I'm not too hopeful about those chances, but I think they can make it out the play-in now.
Here's something. Okay, there's a bunch of weirdness here. They're under 500 since the trade, but they're really good in the month of March. Before the trade, one of their defining characteristics was they shot a ton of threes and they prevented a lot of threes. It was a very math-based game. Now they're down to 14th in three-point rate and 22nd in opponent three-point rate. So they got like the 8th highest or 9th highest opponent three-point rate. If you had to switch that, if it had been like, oh, before they were playing kind of inefficient ball, but now they're playing hyper efficient, I would give them a little bit of a chance here because the Celtics, the Bulls beat the Celtics earlier this season. And I would have been looking at that, been like, hey, if you can get into that 2-7 and mess with the ability for them to just win the math game, that gets a little interesting. But I think they're too far out to get to the 7, and I do think the Cavaliers are just overall too strong. I think it's cool that they've gotten some internal development, that Kobe White's back on track. It's nice to see Josh Giddey giving them something. But overall, I do kind of think this is more of a blip. I don't think that they're actually a team that playoff teams are going to have to worry about at all.
All right, coming up on Locked On NBA, certainly a Warriors team with a healthy Steph Curry is something that Western Conference teams would have to worry about in the playoffs coming up. But will Steph rejoin the Warriors on this road trip? We'll get an update on his health status. Plus, teams are tanking, but they're doing it in a different way now that the NBA has come down on player participation. We'll tell you more about that and get Matt and Haize's opinions all coming up here on Locked On NBA. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Steph Curry has rejoined the Golden State Warriors on their road trip. They are in Miami right now preparing for their matchup on the Heat with the Heat on Tuesday. Big one, Butler's first game against Miami since that whole debacle went down. We'll have more on that game in general tomorrow, but I just want to keep it on Steph Curry for a second. His status will be determined closer to tip. Charlie Walter over at Locked On Warriors discussed how eager the team should be to get Curry back into the lineup.
Good news, no structural damage. It does sound like there's some optimism that he could return on this road trip, which stretches over the next 5 games. He's back in San Francisco right now getting treatment for pelvic contusion. So we will have to wait and see. The Warriors could have used him tonight, but really it wasn't the offense. So maybe it had nothing to do with Steph and had a lot more to do with the Atlanta Hawks being red hot. If he is not 95%, Celebrani and company may just hold him out because this stretch is very winnable with or without Steph Curry. You get what's the opposite of red hot? The ice cold. Miami is in a free fall right now. Then it's at New Orleans, it's at San Antonio, and it's at Memphis. All you want to do is avoid the play-in right now, and that's the only thing on the Warriors' minds are winning basketball games, and they've done just that. They're 8-2 over their last 10. Unfortunately, the Clippers are 8-2, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are 8-2 as well.
All right, Charlie taped that before the Miami Heat got a win, got off their schneid against the Charlotte Hornets. But we want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Warriors getting Curry back in the lineup. Should they rush him back? Should they get him back as soon as possible? But to try to make a run at the 6th seed, avoid the play-in. Right now, they're only a half game ahead of the Timberwolves. They're a game up on the Clippers. Haize, should they rush Curry back?
Man, that's such an interesting question because, you do want to avoid the play-in because in a one-game scenario, anybody can win one game, right? But at the same time, like, you don't want to rush a player back and then they just play bad or then it turns into something lingering. And then what if you do avoid it, but then he's not fully healthy in the opening playoff series? So it's a lot of different thought process between if Curry feels ready to go and he feels like he can get on the basketball court, put him on the basketball court. If he's willing to do it, then cool. But overall, I just take your chances. You've been so good. after the trade that I don't know. I'm still worried if they can make it out the play-in, but I just don't want to rush a play. I don't like the thought process of rushing a player back from injury when it's not needed.
He has a pelvic contusion. He has a hip bruise. That's it. Like, this is not like a thing. But he's fine. He's gonna be totally okay. Like, if this was like, oh man, even the ankle, the surgically repaired ankle from 13 years ago, I would be concerned. This is not a problem. He can come back. What I will say though is when Charlie starts talking about like this very winnable stretch, alarms start going off in my head because of this being March. Immediately, I'm like, the Warriors are going to lose like 2 out of the next 3, aren't they? Like, that's just like what I expect now because of how this month goes. So kind of an interesting question of whether or not they should. I don't think there's any sort of harm bringing Steph back. I think it'll be fine. I don't know what to make of the Warriors still. I still don't know what to make of the Warriors.
Yeah, and they're trying to survive, stay out of the play-in, but also they're only 2 games back of the Grizzlies and for the 5th seed. Only 2.5 back of the Lakers, who they've lost 2 in a row. The Grizzlies have lost 3 in a row. So there's a lot left to play for the Warriors.
I said, like, who should be panic? Like, what host would actually be like, I'm panicking? The answer is Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies. Like, every show is like, the sky is falling. So, yeah, there's a chance for them to get up to the 5 seed. I don't know if you want that. It puts you in Thunder path. You might get Nuggets and then Thunder if you do beat Denver. That's a tough path. Like, that to me is part of this question. But like I said, every team wants to avoid the play-in. I think teams are actually too worried about the play-in tournament. I understand why, but if you're the 7 seed, you're going to be fine. But there is like a real palpable, like, nobody wants to be in the play-in. They all want to get into the top 6.
Right. Well, some teams are attempting to avoid the play-in in order to get into the playoffs. Some teams are avoiding the play-in to improve their draft positioning. Tanking, again, a topic of conversation in the NBA after the league created new rules around player participation. It seems teams are getting even savvier about how they tank. More teams are resting star players in crunch time, so they're starting their stars, they're playing their stars, but if games are close in the fourth quarter, pulling those stars, as profiled by Tim Bontemps in his latest for ESPN.com. What do you think, Matt? Is this a problem for the NBA that now you have teams playing their stars but then pulling them when the games matter most?
I actually kind of prefer this. I think if you went to a game and you went to Raptors Jazz, right, you get to see Scotty Barnes, you get to see whoever's good for the Jazz, and you get to actually like watch an actual game play out. You get to see two teams compete for 3 quarters. And then the people watching at home who are worried about draft positioning and are the sickos that are like they want to see the young players develop, they get to watch those guys in the fourth quarter. These games don't matter because they stop mattering once those teams fell so far behind the rest of the pack. They're not going to compete for anything meaningful this year. And if you want to change that, you need to change the structure of the season or change the structure of the playoffs. Like, that's just the reality of this. And so for me, Haize, like, I actually find this to be a little bit more ethical because you are giving the product that you are supposed to for 3 quarters, and then you're downshifting because the end result is not what matters. It's the play inside of those 4 quarters.
It's more ethical is the perfect way to describe that, because that is what it is. Like, I'd rather see them for some of the game, even most of the game, and you got to sit them, right? I still think that my choice or my suggestion is the best one here. Is take all the GMs from losing teams, have them do a one-on-one tournament, play basketball. The winner, that's the one who gets the actual pick. So, and that way you also teams to employ more former players to increase their odds at lottery. There you go.
I guess my problem with this is that it just highlights how disingenuous this all is. And I think you have coaches coming out after the games and saying that it's, we're looking at long-term health and things like this, but it just puts a spotlight on how these games that people are paying money for, they're not paying money to see actual competition happen. They're seeing this like larger, sort of 30,000 foot management of a season. And I don't know. I just think I guess I'm actually better. I'm opposite of you, Matt. I'm actually better if they just pull everyone and say, look, we're worried about the health of these players and not have to play them because of player participation rules.
Yeah, I see. To me, that's a much more fake game where it's like, Hey, you're watching Jamal Sheed, who, by the way, is awesome, and Jamison Battle, who, again, is really good, and all these types of guys. That's not like whomst is signing up for that. And so when the players are out there, they're competing because they care to compete. And so they're playing the game. And if you put those two teams out there, and if the starters blow out the other team, then they take the win. They're just like, all right, well, they won that game. It's all right. They're not throwing the ball out of bounds. They're not purposefully airballing shots. To me, those factors kind of matter here. If we want to get rid of the incentive, we have to change the entire draft structure, which I'm open to, but it also creates a lot of unintended consequences that everyone doesn't really consider when they start rethinking these things. And some of this is just like, this is just what it is. This happens in the NFL. This happens in the NHL. This happens in Major League Baseball. Like, not as much in baseball. This happens in the other sports. And this is just is a necessary evil, I think, when we have the structure of assigning talent to teams that need it most of the draft.
Yeah, look, I don't know that anyone really checks the injury report before making a decision whether to buy tickets or not. I don't love the idea of going into a game and seeing good players and going, okay, and then you get to the fourth quarter, it's like, oh, we got a game here. And then all of a sudden it becomes not a game. And it's like, what did I just watch? At least if none of the stars play, then I at least know what I'm getting into. I just feel like it's a bait and hook situation that I don't love about it.
So wait, if they bench if they bench the starters, or if they rest the starters, and then they bench who the starters were of the backups, is that better?
Again, at least I think I know what I'm getting into. At the beginning of the game, I know what I'm getting into. Whereas in this situation, it's like, wait a minute, we just had a close game.
Yeah, you feel like it's projecting that playing the good players is projecting we're trying to win, and then switching it up is kind of a bait and switch. That makes sense.
Right. Bait and switch. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Bait and hook. That doesn't make any sense. All right, Haize, last word.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. There's no way to like completely eliminate all of this from the game. It's unfortunate, but it's just a byproduct of sports.
All right, let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thanks to Matt and Haize for their expertise. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA.